what happens in yoga, as you start to bring the Kundalini or the life force up the chakras, then you leave the lower belly chakra and start coming up towards the heart. The lower belly is the center for ambition, lust, sexual prowess, the ability to influence others politically. It's not evil, it's just a chakra for a lot of animalistic tendencies. Now, as you come up towards the heart, your sexuality will change. You don't become asexual, you're just very connected during lovemaking. Victoria's Secret or not. I have to tell you about Victoria's Secret. I went to a country where they weave these bright pink things, and I saw who weaves them. And that was an absolute turn-off. There was somebody like this with 7 children in her arms, and it was a fisherman's wife doing the hot pink. So that's the other side. Anyways, when you come up to the heart chakra, you start to process things like sexuality, the opposite sex, stakes, whatever. You start to process these differently. It'll happen naturally. You don't have to force yourself to become a vegetarian. When certain chakras are over with certain things, you'll just lose the taste for it. I've had students who've gone vegetarian within 1 day. I have other students and I say to them, you should not become a vegetarian yet. If some of you abandon sex, you're going to go stark raving crazy. Do not do it out of sequence. My view of yoga is you need to wait until the life force naturally is finished with certain businesses. You know, if you get to the stage where you have absolute heart connection, man and woman, during lovemaking, then you're there. If you're not there, fine. Be easy with the other stage. The wisest teachers never say no to the student, because saying no drives the mind crazy. Never say no to your mind. Give it a yes that's a bigger yes than your bad habit. If you've ever raised any children, you know that if you're smart enough to give your child a big yes that'll take them towards the good behavior, that's a lot better than a huge no. Because the mind rebels towards the no. Doesn't like it. Do not work with the word no. Look at the US during the Prohibition. Every basement became a bar. Coming back to yoga and what it does for you. Your mind is busy. Your mind is constantly being bombarded with over-information. And what yoga does, it puts you into meditation, it puts you into contemplative moments, it puts you into breathing, so your mind gets used to looking inward instead of outward. As you develop an inward gaze, you notice that you're not being bombarded by over-information. One way I can tell an experienced meditator, if I look into their closet, if I see their bathroom, I know how advanced they are in yoga. Because you may love your facial creams, but you won't own 25 tubes in your bathroom if you're an old-time meditator. Because clutter will start to give you headaches. You may be a very fashionable woman, but if you're an experienced meditator, your closet will not give you a headache. If you forget that you've had a shoe for a year and a half, time to toss it out. So I'm not a communist. All I'm saying is, if you've forgotten a shoe for a year and a half, there's something wrong. There is something wrong. So what happens in the life of a meditator, their lives start to become simpler. You'll still have wonderful dresses, but the closet becomes simpler. You'll be able to throw some things away, meaning recycle them, get them out to other people. You allow money to flow through your life instead of just hoarding. Anyways, I'll conclude this talk by telling you why yoga makes you feel better. Number one, it changes your lenses. When your perspective changes, you experience the same Wednesday in a different light. Number two, the five senses we're always wanting get reeled in towards an inner sense of satisfaction. So the five senses stop driving you crazy. Number three, the restless mind that is being bombarded by over-information becomes more interested in quietude, stillness, going off to the lake. This is not the same thing as becoming antisocial. You start to develop a taste for the inner life. The other thing is the sexual desires start to become more humanistic. They're still there. You may actually be sexually stronger, but the intention is more loving rather than pure lust. Also, your relationship with money changes. With the yogic sciences, you realize that the dollar bill does not control you, that you have an energy inside you that attracts the dollar bill. There are people who look at a bill and give it power. There are others who look at the bill and say, well, I generate it. I'm the one that generates it. I had a very enlightened teacher, and he was in charge of one of the biggest spiritual movements in the world. He wanted to send something like 40 to 60 people to Moscow by the next day. This was during Gorbachev's time. He wanted to get his group over to Moscow to calm the country down. His accountant came to him and said, we don't have money to rent a Boeing 707. And he laughed and laughed. He said, money is like a taxi. I'm going to whistle tonight. It'll be there by tomorrow. So the accountant said, okay, if you insist. He literally said this. He said, oh, money is a taxi. I'm going to whistle for it. So that night he went into silence. Overnight, a British lord died. His wife, who was a disciple, gained 60 million pounds from the dead husband, and she called this guru and gave part of it to the guru. So the next day, everybody boarded the Boeing 707 and went to Moscow. You can be the same. You can realize that God is inside you. The God force is pumping through your heart. Keep your focus on I, breathe in the God force. When I breathe out, that force generates resources. All you've got to do is get rid of your first name and last name. Every illness will leave you. Every addiction will leave you. It's like Holy Spirit breathes in, Spirit acts through me in the exhalation. Within a month, you'll be in absolute bliss. All you've got to do is lose your ego personality. God bless you, and we'll have the next talk soon. About what yoga is and why it transforms your life. First of all, the word yoga nowadays is misconstrued because people think yoga is standing on your head. That's one of the three main branches of yoga. Yoga, meaning the science of yoga, is comprised of three branches. One are the asanas, where you strengthen your body through yogic postures. You work on your glands, your joints, your internal organs, secretions of the body. All of that is controlled by the asanas. That's one branch of yoga. The second one is called pranayama. Pranayama means if you have some sort of mastery over your breathing, then you're going to master your mind. And this is quite easy to test. If you're angry or jittery and you slow down your breath, you make your breath rhythmic, you make your breath smooth and unbroken, within a few seconds you'll see that the mind is settling down. So the ancient yogis were very smart. They realized that your moods affect your breathing, and they thought, well, it's very difficult to control moods. So they took the other side of the coin and said, well, it's possible to control breathing. Let's start control breathing. Let's control breathing to see if we can control the mood. And it worked. So what I just said is called pranayama. Pranayama means get a hold of your breathing in order to get a hold of your mind. Once you have a hold of your mind, you obviously have a hold of your life. So it goes breathing, mastery of breathing, equals mastery of mind, equals mastery of your life. Simple as that. So that's the second branch of yoga. It's called pranayama. The third branch of it is dhyana, which is meditation. Meditation means concentration multiplied several times. So I'm going to give you an example. Imagine we're sitting here and the first few raindrops fall onto the parking lot. Each drop of rain represents concentration, but if you get enough raindrops so you get a stream going down the parking lot, that stream of raindrops is meditation. I'm just using an analogy. So one drop of focus is called dharana. Dharana means one moment of laser-like concentration. If you turn that into a stream of unbroken concentration, that constitutes meditation. So all meditation is a stream of continuous concentration. That would only be possible if you love what you're concentrating on. If you love fashion, in a fashion show, you find yourself losing track of an hour without knowing what happened. If you love photography, you get lost behind the camera lens. You don't know what happened. If you're cloud gazing, you may lose 4 hours because you're enchanted by the clouds and you've got continuous flow of concentration. I'm like that with writing. If I have a pen in my hand, I lose track of time. I do recommend you log into my blog, by the way. It's got about 100 of my writings. I do spiritual writing. Each one is only a couple of paragraphs. It's on a site called WordPress. So if you go on my website and click on the blog, there's like 100 pieces of writing. You can use those pieces of writing to put yourself on an informal course. How do you do that? You click on one of my writings per day and implement that on that day. Each piece of writing is basically a lesson in life. You can use the blog to put yourself on a course like that. Okay, let's come back to why yoga affects you so powerfully. Yoga does not change Southern California or Laguna or Dana Point. Yoga has nothing to do with the external environment. What yoga does, it changes your perspective. Now, why would a change in perspective change the pain of a divorce? Why would a change in perspective change cancer? It wouldn't. And now, what's the reason why it would? Ancient yoga says everything you experience on a Wednesday goes through the lens of your perception. So whether you're having a good day or a hellish day completely depends on the quality of thoughts that you're having. When you're having great thoughts on a particular day, you naturally love your husband and your children and the scenery more. Why? Because you're having a heavenly mind. So we could take you to Waikiki, give you coconut juice, but if you start worrying about your stock portfolio, then the Pacific Ocean is going to turn into worry. You test this out. It'll be fascinating to you. I want you to test something out. When we leave the class, I want you to purposely manipulate your perception. Start calling yourself lucky. Start feeling as if there's no lack of abundance in nature. Start feeling like your days of illness are over because you've forgiven some people that had made you angry in the past. So as you forgive, your illness is going to go away. I want you to try something tomorrow. Choose your perception and walk into Dana Point with your chosen perception and see what that does to the quality of your day. You'll be amazed to know that the city of Dana Point has no effect on the kind of day that you're having. Everything on a Wednesday goes through the filter of your perception. When you modify your perception, the quality of your life immediately changes. There's another reason now why quality of life changes. Both the quantum physicists and the ancient yogis say that God, the Almighty, is made of consciousness. So when you broadcast constructive, optimistic, loving consciousness, the God force being your mirror ricochets back events and circumstances that are in line with your kind of consciousness. So as a normal human being, I'll tell you, my wife and I are surrounded by incredibly good friends wherever our airplane lands. What's the reason? The reason is over 25 years of doing Kriya Yoga and practicing the scriptures, my perspective has become more loving and optimistic. Because I'm looking through optimistic and loving eyeglasses, I happen to be attracting good friends. Another thing that you'll know, those of you who are groupies, who go to a lot of classes, you're going to notice one other thing. The students in each class tend to reflect the consciousness of the teacher. So I know Sri Karuni Maya in India, she caters to the poorest of the poor in her city. So when you go to meditate with her, there's a lot of mopeds and street musicians and beggars at the meditation session. I've also met gurus who make a lot of money. So their classes are full of billionaires. Is this good or bad? It's neither one, it's neutral. What does that mean? It means that the God force is a mirror. If the teacher is a lover of money, then the students are going to be quite well off and into money. So we've had all sorts of teachers in the history of yoga. There's no judgment. Everything is a mirror. In other words, for every action, there's a reaction. Nobody's a victim in this world. If there's something wrong in your external life, you need to know why you are lacking harmony in your internal life. If there's disharmony in your external life, there's got to be disharmony in your inner life. It's not accidental. If you're surrounded by very loving people, it's probably because you appreciate love within. Everything comes from inside out. Let's go back to yoga. So yoga doesn't change your city, it changes your perspective. When your perspective changes in a quantum world, you start to get feedback, circumstances, and thoughts that are in line with your perspective. When your eyeglasses change, your entire life starts to change. Simple as that. This is why you need to put 95% of your entire energy on your mind. The mind is the processing center. 95% of your entire energy should be placed on polishing up your mind. The body, according to yoga, is just an automobile. It's a vehicle. In California, everybody takes care of their bodies. Wonderful. Continue doing it. However, your body is under full control of your mind. If you create a golden mind, that body is going to become healthier and more beautiful. Feel beautiful, you look beautiful. I've been next to an 85-year-old woman. She had silver hair down to here. Every 23-year-old guy was dying to sit at her table. She was gorgeous. So it's possible at 85 to be very gorgeous. Comes from inside out. Let's keep going with why yoga changes your life and makes you feel better. Another reason yoga makes you feel better is that the ancient scriptures, and I'll name some of them, the ancient scriptures talk about time-proven ways of maintaining contentment and lasting joy. I'm going to name you some of the purest of the Vedas, and then I'll tell you that the Vedic course that I'm going to start in mid-July is a medley or a combination of the texts I'm going to mention. The Upanishads, one of them. The Bhagavad Gita, which is so old, nobody knows who the author is. The Tantra Lokas, one of the longest texts ever written. Just the chapter 1 is made up of some 200 verses. It's a very long text. It's all about the art of living, really. Then we have the Shiva Sutras. We have the Spandakarika. Spandakarika is an entire text describing the Lord Almighty as a pulsation underneath the atom. Spanda means pulse. Karika means verses. Spandakarika is an entire verse describing how God pulses in two motions. One motion of the Lord is to retract and become ego or thought. Her other motion is to expand into formlessness, weightlessness, thoughtlessness. So according to yoga, even the Lord has a contraction. When the Lord contracts, she becomes Lisa. When she expands, Lisa becomes pure contentment, inner quietude, creativity, and meditation. If you're wondering who you are, know that you're not Eddie. So you say, well, how come all my life I've been called Eddie? Who am I? Yoga would tell you Eddie is actually the Lord wanting to experience her own creation as Eddie in a town called Dana Point. Imagine what would happen to your life if you woke up tomorrow and you say, I just realized I'm not Miguel. I'm the God force that has constructed this body to experience herself as Miguel. What would happen to your life? Some very wonderful things. Because immediately you'd be rid of your ego. If you have no personal ego, you have no life memories. If you have no life memories, then there's no wounds. You know, this statement about strengthening self-confidence, that doesn't mean anything if you have no ego. If you have no ego, there's no self-confidence issue. Lack of self-confidence comes from negative memories etched in your subconscious mind. If your identity became, Lord is breathing in, Lord is exhaling to act through my body, you would basically be rid of psychology. Psychology deals with your mind to heal your mind. God bless them because they help you through healing your mind. But what if you had no mind? Then you would be in the realm of spirituality. If you're a counselor, I suggest you combine the two. In other words, for your students who are higher souls, take them to the identity of Holy Spirit breathes in, Holy Spirit breathes out to act in my life. For those who are still at a heavier stage, work with their head. Combine the two types of healing. It's very effective. Let's go on to why yoga makes you feel better. You have these 5 senses. The 5 senses do not stop wanting. The 5 senses have been designed to want. So you buy one watch, 2 months later you want to buy another watch. You go to a shopping center, it's very difficult to stop at one pair of shoes. You go to a casino and you want to drop in the second quarter into the slot machine. Do not expect your 5 senses to stop wanting. That is never going to happen. So then now we have a major problem. So if you ask the biggest sage in the world, what do I do with these 5 senses? You're telling me that they're designed to want. So how do I put some sanity into my life? The answer is that you must take the 5 senses, reel them in, and find them a gift on the inside that is more luring than marijuana, shopping center, Netflix, whatever. There's nothing wrong with these organizations. They cater to your 5 senses. Being Americans, you guys have a huge issue. What's the issue? Because of the democracy and capitalism, you are surrounded by goodies to shop for. This country has a lot of goodies. So when you're surrounded with goodies, you have a major problem to begin with. How do you reel in your 5 senses so that you're content with your car for 5 years? Very difficult, because the economy makes it easy for you to trade in every 2 years. And then you start to look for happiness in something else, which doesn't exist. For as long as you're not connected with your inner soul, you're not going to be contented. Your 5 senses are never ever going to be content. So just say to yourself, this doesn't work. In other words, buying another dress is not gonna work towards lasting contentment. It will make me happy. I'm a car lover. I enjoy riding it, but it's different than the love of my wife. So you have to distinguish. In Wall Street, we get confused between the wife and the billions. There's a major confusion there, because people are not sure. You know, is my wife better or my Maserati? People get confused. And yoga will say, your 5 senses will never ever bring you lasting contentment. You've got to connect with something behind your navel, your belly button. You've got to be connected there. That doesn't mean you can't own dresses. Go and buy them. What's the next point of yoga? The word attachment. Yoga teaches detachment. Detachment is a very misunderstood word. Some people think detachment is for old folks. They say to me, well, you're 62, you've got some old farts in your class, and it's easy for you guys to say detachment. But I'm 23, I've got a bikini and a Porsche. What do I need detachment for? They're misunderstanding the word. Detachment doesn't mean don't enjoy your Porsche. It means that if you get a flat tire, don't become a wreck. If somebody takes a nail to it, don't be a wreck. Ride it, enjoy the sports car, but you are not your sports car. If you fall in love with a beautiful girl and she says no, don't kill yourself. I had a wonderfully wise and attractive student in one of my classes. She said, Kambiz, guys are like buses. You miss one, the next one will come along. She was sure that guys were the same as buses. I like the analogy. She wasn't worried. Anyways, so be very honest about your 5 senses. Just say to yourself, this is not going to work. If I go after major contentment by super shopping sprees, in the end, it's not going to work. I have to realize that I need to reel my senses inward. So, and I need detachment. Detachment simply means that you found something on your inside which is so pleasing that you give your 5 senses a gift that is more powerful than a great meal, than shopping for watches, cars, and so forth. What is the greatest gift you can give your 5 senses so that they'll be motivated to come inward? The one and only answer is, your mind and your senses are like these lost children. They're looking for contentment and they don't know where to look. You need to be wise enough to bring them in and connect them with your sense of wholeness. Like the voice of your heart, that still voice within. You being a good friend with yourself, so you can go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming by yourself with a yoga mat, with maybe some good music and a good book and nothing else. You know, like fireplace, some calming music, yoga mat, and a good book. And you're there in that cabin by yourself for 3 days, and it's raining outside. Can you last? When I was 20, I couldn't. I had to keep calling friends for the next party. I had a zero relationship with the self. So how many of you can go to a log cabin for 2 rainy days with a fireplace, a good book, and a yoga mat, and be happy? Okay, that's a very good sign. I hope you're not lying. Because most people have 3 TV sets, a couple of iPods, an iPad, and all the rest of it. And those are wonderful inventions, but you know, the mobile phone has robbed us of some free time, even in the bathroom. The last place you had privacy was when you were sitting on the loo. And now that's gone because somebody's messaging you, right? So are you brave enough to scrape up some private time as a discipline? If you lose your inwardness, you will be an emotional wreck. And in a country that offers everything, your challenge is 5 times greater. I had zero relationship with myself at the age of 23. I was invited to some great parties, but I couldn't deal with myself. So test yourself on that front. Walden Pond, Mr. Thoreau, was one of the first Americans to talk about this. Me time for 90 days next to a pond. What do I do? So yoga develops your ability to get along with yourself. It's called the inward gaze. Can I spend time with myself on the beach? Am I happy to have some time with myself? And as you develop that relationship with yourself, some other magical thing happens. You start loving yourself regardless of your figure, your age, your income, whatever. So that's really, really heaven, when you start to like yourself as who you are. It's wonderful. It's a huge gift. Let's talk about what else yoga does for you. You have this apparatus called the mind. The lower mind, the intellectual mind, is constantly thinking. Some people say that on the average, you have 60,000 thoughts per day. Almost, well, I would say all of them are about either the future or the past. So your rambling mind is not connecting you to the present moment. Because you're not in the present moment, you're suffering. The other thing that the mind does, it disconnects you with the core of who you are. The root of human suffering is you getting separated from that stillness within. Stillness within is not the same thing as loneliness. You need to give me an answer to this question. What's the difference between sweet solitude and loneliness?
I think the enjoyment factor.
Okay, enjoyment factor. What's the difference between sweet solitude and loneliness?
Solitude you enjoy, you feel sad, you depressed.
Feel sad, okay. Now think about the words soul and ego. And then think about sweet solitude and loneliness. Which comes from where? Soul, sweet solitude is soul. It's like, I would love to have 3 hours with a delicious book in front of a fireplace. Everybody leave me alone because I like myself. What were you going to say?
Yeah, that's the connection you feel. That
With
you
this-
feel connected to self, to soul, and in loneliness I would feel disconnected. Alone.
Yeah. So a lot of people are confused between sweet solitude, and loneliness. I'll tell you one of my memories from my old Manhattan days. In Manhattan, when I was living there, they had these huge lofts. There were coffee places, you know, brunch and coffee. So it was one of these lofts where on a Sunday morning, everybody was hunting for a mate. So there were these gorgeous models and dancers, and there was all these young, fine men, and they were all having their cappuccinos. And I went with my best friend, and a lot of good lookers that day. And I said to my friend, I said, which one is the most attractive? And he looked around, he said, that one. And I looked over, and there was this woman wearing a very nice kind of like country dress, and she was reading this book with this big smile on her face, like she was enjoying the book. And it was the only one in the loft who wasn't hunting. And this friend, I mean, that's one taste. This friend said that's the most attractive, because he was seeing contentment. As I speak to you about these things, you know, there's a balance to everything I say. So you don't need to be cave dwellers to find contentment. You know when to date. You know when to spend time by yourself at the shore. But if you cannot spend time with yourself, then you're in deep trouble. I would say a major cause of addiction is falling away from your own sweet solitude. If you lack self-love, you're going to need to fill up that vacuum with nicotine, whiskey, cocaine, something. The major essential root of addiction is lack of relationship with the self. So I'm going to ask you to participate. I want some people to tell me which activity puts you in a state of sweet solitude and connectedness with the self. Which hobby? Which activity?
Meditation.
Meditation, good. Is it yoga for you? Yeah, Miguel?
Hiking.
Hiking, good. What else?
Sports.
Sports. You lose track of time when you're in sports? Good. Does it also put you in touch with yourself?
Yeah, I don't think about it, but I'm just saying that.
Okay. I mean, for me, it's writing. When I have a pen in my hand, nothing can scare me. I'm not worried about anything. As long as I'm writing, I'm not worried. The other thing is I can easily lose track of time. Also, notice one thing. Your Dharma, which is that optimal activity for you, the Dharma actually makes you handsome or gorgeous. This is very hard to believe, but it's true. I've tested it. There was a time when I was a bachelor, and every time I wrote, somebody would smile at me in the street. So, you know, for a while you think it's accidental, and then it happens 4 times. There are activities that actually make you more attractive because you're glowing. Other people, what's your Dharma? What makes you peaceful, attractive? You lose track of time, you lose your fear and worry, you're more joyful, you connect with yourself. Any other comments? Yes?
I have a couple of yoga, meditation, walking my dog, and reading. Those all do it for me. Just guaranteed, no matter what's happening in my life, if I pick one of those, it's guaranteed I'm joyful and I.
Okay, so my next question is, do you now know the quality of your inner self? In other words, let's say you're walking your dog, there's a lot of love between you and your dog, there's nature and all that. Do you know the difference between how your ego feels and your most authentic layer? Do you know the difference in how those two feel?
I think so. I mean, there's no judgment, there's no concern of outside influence, it's just contentment.
Okay, contentment. It's a huge word. Diana, do you know the difference between how your ego feels and how your soul feels? You're a writer, so that's the main activity that puts you in touch? And you walk by the beach sometimes? And that does it
When I
also?
was a runner, running would do it.
Okay. So find your Dharma. Dharma is that activity that makes you feel like you're closer to yourself. Passage of time disappears. Fear and worry disappear because you're not even in the future. You feel much more courageous. You feel like everything's going to be okay somehow. Also, you know, when you connect with the right teaching and the right teacher, if you connect with the right teacher, you feel like after that day onwards, everything is somehow going to be okay. Although you still have a lot of issues to manage, but you feel like, ah, thank God, I found the road. And that's very relaxing to know that you found the road. If you find the path, it's extremely relaxing because at least you know what you're going to do. Which other ways does yoga make you feel wonderful and transform you? Let's talk about the chakras. According to yoga, you have 7 energy centers coming up from the tailbone to the lower stomach, to the belly, to the heart, to the pit of the throat, third eye, and crown. What happens to you as the life force starts to go up these chakras? One of the things that happens is that we lose some of our animalistic tendencies. As we come up towards the heart chakra, we look at the same familiar situations with more humanity, integrity, decency. Let's be very honest. Boys are attracted to girls and vice versa. In the boy-girl game, we all have hormones. And sometimes we're extremely attracted. So then there's this combination of physical attraction, lust, potential love and romance, so forth.